Is this thing on? I'm trying a new setup today, just because my office is in a bit of a disaster zone today. So I hope you can all hear me. This is actually the first time I'm doing this on my laptop. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for joining me today, and please say hi as you come in so that I know that you're here. And as always, if you're watching the replay, give me a hashtag replay in the comments so that I know that you've seen this. Also, I'm interested to know where you're watching from, and if this time is convenient for you, so let me know about that as well. Okay, wow, so where do we start? Since launching this group, I've had an influx of ladies asking me about to sort of go ahead and accept themselves just as they are, and others that are struggling with that inner voice, especially around them maybe not being good enough or worthy enough. And both of these aspects are interlinked, and so we'll be talking about both of these today. And stay tuned because I have a really powerful meditation for you a little bit later on. So, okay, so here's a question for you. Do you accept yourself fully and completely without reservation? Or do you also have those gremlins in your head telling you tales of unworthiness? Let me know in the comments. So, Wikipedia defines self-acceptance as the awareness of one's strengths and weaknesses and the realistic, yet subjective, appraisal of one's talents, capabilities, and general worth, and feelings of satisfaction with oneself despite deficiencies and regardless of past behaviors and choices. Then the Merriam-Webster dictionary just kind of shortens that a little bit, and it says that self-acceptance is really the act or the state of accepting oneself, the act or state of understanding and recognizing one's own abilities and limitations. As it turns out, it's not very hard to accept the good parts of ourselves, right? It's the flaws, and in many cases our failures and the not so nice parts of ourselves that we struggle to accept. If that resonates with you, drop it in the comments. And what we find is that when one of our flaws or our failures or the not so nice part rises to the surface, the first thing we tend to do is to start criticizing ourselves, right? That self-criticism is basically you punishing yourself for your inadequacies. Those thoughts often blame yourself for being weak, maybe not meeting a desired self-image. Can you relate to that too? I mean, I can certainly relate. I worked out for so many years without seeing any results. I worked my ass off. I was doing all the right stuff, eating the right things. I was frustrated that my body wasn't working with me. So every time I saw myself in the mirror, I used to criticize myself. I told myself I wasn't doing enough, I wasn't working hard enough. Oh, look how you're still not losing weight. Oh my God, look, another dimple on your bum. It was never ending. And frankly, it weighed me down, no pun intended, and it made me feel like shit every day. Seriously, not cool. And once I decided to start practicing self-compassion, all of a sudden things really started to shift for me. Now I'm proud to say that I'm stronger and fitter than I've ever been, but I'm in a bulking phase at the moment with my coach, and so I've put on a few extra kilos, and a lot of my clothes just aren't fitting me anymore. And I still get those days here and there where I try on a pair of pants or whatever, and it just doesn't fit. I immediately have to catch myself and change that thought about what's going on. I get into a state of compassion and then practice some self-care after the gym, of course. And then that totally helps to soothe the trigger. And that same practice can be done for any trigger. So, in a nutshell, if there's something that triggers you, you've got two choices. And the beauty of it is that they both take the same amount of mental work and energy. One is not easier than the other, they are both equal. Okay? You can either choose to self-criticize, in which case you're going to feel self-neglect, which is going to lead to making you feel like shit. Okay? Or you can choose self-compassion, in which case you're going to feel a sense of self-care, self-love, and you end up feeling pretty good. You know, your inner critic, that's the one that tells you you're not good enough, and if you don't work hard enough, you're going to lose your job, or you're weak, or you'll never succeed at that goal, or you're an idiot, whatever. The inner critic's function is to prevent you from making mistakes and to keep you safe from harm. And the inner critic, well, it wants what's best for you. But the problem is that it attempts to increase your motivation in a hurtful and unproductive way. So your inner critic mostly monitors failure, and that's why the feedback is almost always negative. Secondly, the way that the inner critic presents its feedback is typically harsh and unsupportive, and that leads to, negative emotions like guilt and shame and anger. So this basically leads to like a vicious circle or cycle whereby you feel like crap, which leads to more self-criticism, which then triggers, a further drop in mood, and then even more self-criticism. And then, you find yourself saying, oh, what's wrong with me? How could you let this happen? Why me? I can't do anything right. And, maybe if I continue like this, I'll inevitably fail. I mean, you get the point. Another characteristic of that inner critic is that it compares you to other people, especially to their achievements and abilities. I mean, I remember looking on social media at women who had accomplished a shit ton more than I had in terms of their physique over a 12-week period. And here I was, 3 years down the line, thinking, what the hell's wrong with me, with nothing to show for it? So I've been there before. I hear where you're coming from. The inner critic pays little to no attention to your accomplishments or your strengths. Another fun one, actually, it totally exaggerates and generalizes your weaknesses. You always mess up. You can never do anything right. It's like very black and white thinking. So what this starts to look like is, okay, so let's say you've got a trigger. So you made a mistake at work or in your business, and then that leads to feelings of stress. And what you need is rest, right? But your thoughts are saying, oh, I'm a failure. And then that leads to self-neglect, which is, I'm going to work even harder. Or if you're rejected by somebody, that's the trigger. That leads to feelings of maybe isolation, right? You need relatedness, but your thinking is, I'm not worth being with. And then the self-neglect of that is actually isolating yourself. Does that make sense? If that makes sense and you can relate, let me know in the comments as well. So on the flip side, by the way, I can't see anybody's comments, so I don't know if that's just like a laptop situation. So if you're leaving comments, thank you, and I will respond to them after the live, unless I figure out how to get this thing going. Okay, so on the flip side, we have self-compassion, okay? And that's where you treat yourself with care and concern, okay? When you're working through these inadequacies or these mistakes or failures or other painful life situations. It's self-kindness instead of self-judgment. Okay, it's a sense of humanity versus isolation. And in this case, humanity that I'm referring to is recognizing that humans are imperfect. Okay, and then it's also mindfulness over identification. And in this case, the mindfulness aspect involves being aware of your painful experience, but don't ignore and don't amplify those thoughts and emotions. Just simply being aware without judgment. Okay. So instead of attacking and berating yourself for your shortcomings, you'd rather replace that with warmth and unconditional acceptance. Or when circumstances are stressful, instead of immediately, jumping to control or fix the problem, a self-compassionate response might be one where you pause to offer yourself some soothing and some comfort. So a few examples of thoughts that reflect self-compassion would be stuff like, I tried my best, or I'm a human being just like everyone else, or I never signed a contract to be perfect, or hey, I learned something, or next time I'll do it differently. So the way that this looks, giving sort of the flip side of the example from earlier, is that the trigger was that you made a mistake at work or in your business that leads to feelings of stress. You still need that rest, but now your thoughts say, it's okay, I tried my best, I can learn from this. And then the self-care that you take is you actually take the time to rest, okay? If you're rejected by someone, that's still the trigger. That leads to feelings of isolation, that hasn't changed. You need relatedness. Cool. Now, your thinking is, you know what? Everybody gets rejected at some time in their life. It's okay. And then the self-care ends up being that you call a friend to hang out. So can you see the power of changing your thinking? Give me a hell yes in the comments if you agree. Okay. At first, self-compassion behavior sort of may seem at odds or contradictory to the behavior that is aimed to cope with these sorts of problems. Okay, and it's not uncommon for self-compassion to be mistaken for self-pity or passivity. But self-care has actually been found to increase empathy, immunologic functioning, and it's also been associated with lower levels of anxiety and depression. So you can flip that self-criticism into constructive feedback just by being curious. So after noticing the self-critical talk, you could ask yourself, what would you say to a close friend or a child in that same situation? What words, would you use? What tone of voice would you use? Ask yourself what you can learn from that situation and how you can learn, how you can use that situation to grow as a person. Okay, I can guarantee you that, the way that you're going to speak to a child or, your best friend that's going through it is not one of like, oh, you're stupid, just get over it, like you're not going to be mean to them. Okay. So this does take a considerable amount of self-awareness. So it's not a quick fix, but with practice, you can master this. Okay. So as I promised you a little bit earlier, I'd like to take some time now to just go through a self-acceptance meditation, which I find to be super powerful. So if you're in a safe space where you feel comfortable to close your eyes, you can do so now. Otherwise, just look at a point on the floor in front of you with your eyes semi-closed. Okay. So right now, just focus your attention on your breath. Just notice how you breathe in and you breathe out. Allow yourself to just do that. Breathe in and breathe out. There is nothing you need to achieve or become. In this meditation, you cannot fail or succeed. Just see how it goes. Simply breathe in and breathe out. Feel how the air flows through your nose, how it expands your chest when you breathe in, and how the air moves out when you exhale. Follow the breath like this for a few moments. So self-acceptance, as the term suggests, is about the self. But who is the self? Who are you? Let's go and explore how your self developed. And for this, I would like you to go back with me in time. Imagine the moment that you were born, the moment that you came to this planet as a little baby. You had no idea about right or wrong, no idea about anything really. You just were. You were looking at this world with brand new eyes. Try to visualize yourself as a little baby, as vividly as possible. Now, imagine that somebody would tell you, this baby, that you're not good enough just yet, that you need to find a good job later in life, or that you need to make enough money or become successful in order to be enough, that you would be worthy of love only if you were to become successful in the future, that you were not enough just the way you are now, and that something needed to be added to you, this baby, for you to become worthwhile. Can you imagine yourself saying that to your own newborn child, that it is not good enough yet? Perhaps you agree with me that it makes no sense to consider the worth of this new human being to be dependent on something that it may or may not become. Can you feel how enough you have been from the very moment that you entered this planet? You have always been enough. You have always been whole. You have always been worthy of love. Love is not something that you need to earn. It is your birthright. And for a moment, allow yourself to see if you can feel the truth behind these words. Now slowly let's move into the future. You're no longer a newborn baby. You're a young child. And as you mature, you learn about right and wrong, good and bad. Your parents teach you what it's like to be a good girl. Soon, You notice that some things can cause people around you to react more positively towards you. They praise you and they say that they're proud of you. Maybe you notice that when you work hard at school, help others, act kindly, get good grades, or look beautiful, you receive positive attention from others. Likewise, you learn that some things that you do result in negative attention from others. Maybe you notice that when you fail at school or hang out with the wrong crowd, maybe you dress differently, that people react in a disapproving way toward you. And soon you realize that some things cause people around you to approve of you and perhaps even admire you. And for a moment, being approved by others feels good. It feels as if you're good enough. It feels as if you're whole and that you're loved. How reassuring is this? However, this feeling doesn't last long. And now you need to make sure that after this moment of praise, you continue to get their approval. It's like a drug. Once the effect is gone, you need more. And so you continue to do what will give you that feeling of relief, the feeling of being good enough. Now, I'd like you to think back to you as your younger self that you can remember and connect to this young person. Remember what it felt like to be you at this young age. This may take a little time, but just see how far back you can go. Try to connect yourself with this child. Perhaps you're around 7 or maybe 12, maybe a little bit older. How far back can you travel? It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you can connect to yourself at that younger age. Now, have there been times in your few years of life where you have felt a need to be approved by others? And if you can, allow yourself to go back to such a moment. What do you see? What do you feel? What are you doing to reassure yourself that you are enough? Just see what comes up. Now, let's continue to move forward in time. And as you grow older and you become more mature, you continue to be exposed to a world in which you notice that there appears to be rules for a successful human being. Things that people need to do or become in order to be considered valuable or worthy. And depending on your environment, you may learn that things like money or status or appearance, intelligence, power, physical strength are all important. These things are important because they reveal information about your worth. So for a moment, try to remember what it was like when you were a teenager or a young adult. Visualize yourself around this time as best as you can. What was important to you at this age? What were you striving for? What did you believe made you worthy or successful or enough? So far, we've explored what we can call your conditions for self-worth. Conditions for self-worth are those things that we believe makes us lovable or enough. And we strive for these things so that we can feel like we're loved unconditionally. Most people live in this constant fear of not being enough. And as a result, they spend their entire lives trying to live up to the expectations and standards that surround them. And these standards are conditions. And so we suffer from what we can call conditional self-acceptance. We accept and love ourselves only as long as we meet those standards. Okay, now come back to this present moment, but keep your eyes closed. Bring yourself back to where you are right now, sitting here in this room with my voice. Consider your current life. Are there standards that you've picked up during your life that you're using to evaluate yourself today? What are they? How do you know that those standards are still influencing you today? And how do you feel when you're not able to meet these standards? Imagine the little child inside of you, the child you once were. who is afraid of being unloved, that they might do something that will cause other people to disapprove of them. Now, visualize this little girl standing in front of you, looking back at you. You can feel this child's fear of not being enough. This child is in deep need of being loved. And thankfully, you have the opportunity now to say something to this child. What would you say to her? What would you do? Would you tell her that she is worthy, that she is beautiful? Would you give her a hug? Can you see that you've always been worthy of love from the very first day that you arrived? Can you see that everyone is equally worthy from the time that they were born until the time that they die? And as a child, you may achieve very little, and yet you are still precious and worthwhile. And when you're old or ill, relaxed or asleep, or simply doing nothing, you're still worthy. Your worthiness cannot be measured. It can never, ever change. During your lifetime, you may do some bad things, but this doesn't make you a bad person. And similarly, you may do good things, but that doesn't make you a good person. Your worth is always there, along with your potential to grow and learn from your mistakes. And since you cannot measure or change your worth, there's really no point in being concerned about it. As best as you can, let it go. You are enough just the way you are. And rather than seeking out your worth, devote your time to learn, explore, grow, connect, and enjoy life. We cannot control whether other people appreciate us or accept us, but we can learn to accept ourselves. So if you're ready for it, you can decide right now to make an intention to become more accepting of yourself. This is a moment where you can decide to see yourself for who you are, rather than what you believe you should be. So to start with, allow yourself to be exactly as you are in this present moment. How do you feel? Whatever you feel at this moment, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, just allow it to be there. This is you at this moment, and that is okay. You are okay, right where you are now. Regardless of what you think or feel, just notice what goes on in your body. Maybe there is tension in your shoulders or pain in your stomach. Maybe you feel relaxed, or maybe you feel nothing at all. It's all good. If you want, you can say to yourself, it's okay. Whatever I feel, it's okay. Let go of the need to mold your feelings into something different. This is you at this moment, and that is enough. Now, finally, if you'd like, you may silently repeat the following phrases to yourself. May I accept myself for who I am right now. May I realize that my strengths don't mean that I am more than others. May I realize that my weaknesses don't mean that I'm less than others. May I accept my imperfections. They don't define me or take away from who I am as a person. May I feel and deeply know that I am enough now and that I will always be enough, regardless of what happens. May I realize that I deserve to be loved now, like I deserved to be loved when I was born. May I treat myself the way I treat those who I deeply care for. Now, for a moment or so, just bring your attention back to your breath. And when you feel ready, open your eyes. So, I hope that was as powerful for you as it's been for some of my other clients that I've taken through that process. In the comments, let me know what came up for you during this meditation. And remember that you can come back to this meditation anytime to reconnect with yourself and your acceptance of self. Sorry about the noise in the background. It just started raining unexpectedly. Just a quick reminder, I'll be opening up my 90-minute intensive slots from the 1st of May. So if you're struggling with self-acceptance and silencing your inner critic, DM me and I'll add you to the waitlist. And I still haven't managed to see the comments on this video, so I'll respond to you shortly. So thank you all for joining me today. I really hope this helped, and I'll see you on Friday where we will be talking about becoming fearless. I'll see you then. Have a good week. Bye.